First Person is produced in cooperation with the Far East Broadcasting Company, who rejoice in the stories of changed lives through the power of Jesus Christ. Learn more at febc.org.
Travel to the corners of the planet and you're going to find lots of need everywhere you go. My family and I have had experiences we will never be able to fully grasp until eternity, when we meet all those precious souls we've been able to serve.
He left his family's construction business because he was called of God to a more important kingdom-building project. Welcome to First Person, where today you'll meet Dan Hawkins of Village Ministries. We'll get to the conversation with Dan in just a moment. This is a weekly interview program, and online you can review the conversations we've had with any of the hundreds of people over the years at firstpersoninterview.com. You'll also find us on social media at facebook.com/firstpersoninterview. On a recent trip to Houston, I met some friends for lunch who told me about a ministry which they feel is doing a great job of taking the gospel to villages around the world that may not have any other witness. Based in Oklahoma, Village Ministries is led by Dan Hawkins, who was exposed to the need through a short-term mission trip. He made a life transition and now is spending his life leading evangelism efforts and the training of rural pastors in gospel-neglected places. I asked Dan if he's the founder of Village Ministries.
No, I'm not, but I came along just 2 years after its founding. It was founded by a pastor, Gene Cunningham, and Jody Brown, who was the executive director of a resident care facility for at-risk youth.
Okay, and I understand it has kind of an unusual beginning. How so?
It does. How it began was there was a Nigerian who lived in the central part of Nigeria who loved music. And he went one day to the town market and purchased a cassette tape. And his purpose to get the tape was to record music on it so he could listen to music. But he noticed that there was a recording on it, and on the face of the tape it said something about the faith the rest life. And so he was curious, and he played the tape. And on that tape was a pastor teaching about the faith the rest life that we have in our Christian life. And it was a pastor from Arkansas named Gene Cunningham. And he took that tape and he listened to it and he was intrigued. And so he listened to it again and again. And finally, he was so intrigued by it, he wrote to the pastor. And this occurred in 1988. So he wrote a letter to Gene, and Gene responded, and they started corresponding back and forth. And during that correspondence, this gentleman in Nigeria was led to the Lord. And shortly thereafter, Gene decided he needed to go and meet him in person. So Gene asked Jody Brown to go with him, and they went on a mission trip to Nigeria in 1989. And that was the beginning of a ministry. And in 1990, Africa Village Missions was founded. Mm-hmm. Shortly thereafter, that ministry started really to grow. That man became a pastor, and he began training pastors and grew a network of churches throughout the entire central region of Nigeria, and it still operates today. In 1992, just after the Iron Curtain came down, Jody decided he'd take a trip into Russia. And he didn't find any contacts really to work with in Russia. He didn't have any prior contacts. He just went to try to see where the Lord directed him. And he was on a train and he met an English teacher from one of the former Soviet states. And she invited him to come to their country and to teach in her school. So he went and he taught, and then another school wanted him to come and teach. And within a year, there was 10 American missionaries living in this former Soviet state, and they were evangelizing in the schools. Mm-hmm. They ended up establishing a Bible Institute, and they started a local church. And that local church still thrives today. And through all of that, Village Ministries came about because the ministries, it was obvious the Lord was growing the ministries. And so he brought about Village Ministries as the parent organization to all these field ministries.
Okay, and we'll talk about the purpose and mission of this organization. That's really an interesting start, though. It's amazing how God leads people, and seemingly the smallest of details turn into something like a ministry today. So we'll learn all about that. But I want to hear about you, too. You said you came along a couple years after the founding?
Yes, I took my first mission trip in 1993, and I went to this former Soviet state I was talking about. I'm not referring to the country because it's a very restricted country today.
Understood.
We still have activity there. But I took my first mission trip there, and I remember going, and I had just been a lay person. I had, been an elder on our church board and been involved in church ministry, but I'd never done a mission trip. And I remember arriving into that country, and the country was very gray, very depressing, really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into my hotel room that night, and I was all alone sitting on the bed, and I just prayed, and I said, God, what am I doing here? I just couldn't understand the excitement of coming and going, but then the reality hit once I got into the country. And I just prayed that the Lord would use me, and sure enough, the next day, I went to a school and started evangelizing, and that's my initial beginning of working with Village Ministries.
Okay, so you were a layman in the church, and
Yes.
you took a short-term mission trip, and somehow the Lord just laid this ministry on your heart. What kind of work did you do up until this point, Dan?
I owned a construction company. It was second-generation company. It was founded by my father in 1960, and my brother and I took it over when he passed. I was just 18 at the time. I was in college, and my father passed through the gates of glory and left the business there. And my brother and I were left to whether to pick up the business or to close it. And we picked up the business and started running it. God blessed it. And as a result, I was able to continue working in that business. And I started taking mission trips and helping also the ministry with their administrative infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Very new ministry. They didn't have a lot of the things they needed in place. So in addition to the office space we were able to provide them, we were able to help them with all of their accounting and administrative needs.
I like to talk to people about how God calls them into His service, and yours is one of those unique stories. I mean, did you ever see yourself in full-time ministry, working construction the way you did?
Well, not really. It's interesting that my wife was actually the one that gave me the final nudge. So I'd been making multiple mission trips over a period of several years. I think it was the third year. No, it was the fourth year I was doing it. I've taken a mission trip once a year. And I was working, and one day my wife came up to the office and she said, "Come on, I need to talk with you." So she took me out of our offices and took me out in the parking lot, and she looked me right in the eye and she said, "You're miserable. You need to be doing what the Lord wants you to do.
Wow.
And I know He's calling you to ministry."
That's
and
amazing.
that was the beginning of full-time ministry.
Yeah.
I continue to pray about it. I've been praying about it, but I continue to pray about it. And a few months later, I notified my brother that I'd be selling my portion of the business to him and moving into full-time ministry.
Well, construction is an honorable ministry in and of itself if it's done as unto the Lord, and being a business person is as well, but you have this calling to come into a nonprofit ministry reaching around the world. And again, that's a pretty unusual call, I think. You've got to be very grateful for that, your wife who stepped in and said, it's time.
It was, and she's been with me by my side for 43 years. So it's been a real blessing to have her minister with me and be a part of it. She works in the ministry part-time, and it's wonderful to be able to work with her.
All right. Well, let's honor her by giving her name. Tell me who she is.
Lori Hawkins.
All right. Lori, good job. All right, let's talk about those assignments that you started out with. Did you come right in as the leader of this ministry? And by the way, what is your title for Village Ministries?
Well, I like to say servant. I'm not big on titles.
I understand.
I am the CEO of Village Ministries, and I came on board in 1997. So I volunteered with the ministry doing mission trips, helping with the administrative infrastructure for about 5 years. I came along in 92, 97, I went full time.
Mm-hmm. And where are you located? Where's the office?
Our office is in our Yukon, Oklahoma.
How is it that God has raised up this ministry in little Oklahoma?
Well, that's an interesting story as well. So the ministry actually was housed, or when it was founded, it was established in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And when I took over in 97, I had been running a business for 20 years, but I didn't know how to run a ministry. And so we actually moved the ministry to Texas to be close to the founder. And he worked alongside me for a few years to get me acclimated in ministry, because there is a difference between ministry, obviously, and business.
Mm-hmm.
So we moved to Texas, and then in later years, we moved to Oklahoma City, and it's been here. Yukon is a suburb of Oklahoma City, and it's been here for 15 years.
There's more to learn from Dan Hawkins and about Village Ministries. We'll continue with Dan in just a moment.
I'm Ed Cannon of the Far East Broadcasting Company, and we're happy to help Wayne provide these first-person interviews to you each week. In addition to the program you're listening to, Wayne joins me in hosting a weekly podcast called Until All Have Heard, telling the remarkable stories of the Far East Broadcasting Company. You'll learn how God is using FEBC to proclaim the gospel in all forms of technology available. We're committed to continue taking Christ to the world. Join us at febc.org to listen to Until All Have Heard. Now let's return to First Person.
My guest is Dan Hawkins, who is with Village Ministries International. We've heard how God has called Dan to this ministry. Now we want to hear, what is the purpose and mission of this organization? What's God doing through Village Ministries? So how do you express the mission of what you're doing, Dan?
Well, our ministry really focuses in three areas. We distribute Bibles to believers. We provide theological materials and training. And we provide spiritual respite care for those serving in persecuted countries. Rural village pastors, pastors' wives, and Christian leaders that are serving on the front lines. 70% of the areas where we minister are persecuted.
And how do you identify who you're going to work with?
Well, that's interesting. Our material that we use to train village pastors, it's called Foundations, Building into Faith. It's in 35 languages, continues to grow each year in languages. The material really reaches out ahead of us, and that's how we come in contact with a lot of people that opens doors. They hear about the material, they see the material, and then they ask us to come and teach it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the material is really self-taught once it's been introduced. So we try to go to different areas of the world and introduce the material through a 3-day interactive workshop. And that allows the pastors to ask questions. And what we basically do in just the 3 days is just chapters 1 and 4 of the book. Chapter 1 is an overview of the Bible, and chapter 4 is basic hermeneutics.
Okay.
Now, for us, basic hermeneutics is the key. How to accurately handle the word of truth. And we go, everywhere we go, pastors just do not know how to study the Bible. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, in the areas we reach, way out into the rural areas, only about 40% of the pastors even have Bibles. Mm-hmm. So it's phenomenal that a pastor is trying to pastor a church without a Bible. And so our first thing is we go in, provide a Bible, provide material that it's a study guide that allows them to learn how to study the Bible accurately. And the unique thing about this study guide is that it's about 300 pages, depending on the language that it's in. But there's not you can probably count on one hand the amount of paragraphs that don't have a scriptural reference. Almost all the entire content points directly to Scripture. Mm-hmm. And it demands the student to take that and go to the Word and study and pull out His truth.
And who are the instructors then? Do you have staff that do this or volunteers?
We have volunteer teachers. A lot of them are retired lay people and pastors, and they go on mission trips with us and teach. We also have 23 missionaries in 11 countries, and they also work in countries outside of the country they reside in. So we're reaching about 24 countries, and we have different models of training. We have brick and mortar facilities in some countries. In other countries, it's an online ministry. in heavily restricted countries, we use an online training.
Mm-hmm.
We also do these interactive workshops, 3-day workshops that go in, introduce the material, set it up as a self-study so the pastors can study on their own.
And once they've completed this course and this training, then what do you hope happens?
Our goal is that they go and train others, the Timothy principle, 2 Timothy 2:2, that they go and teach trusted men and allow them to continue that multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that ripple effect.
And do you hope that a church results then?
Yes. Now, a lot of our pastors that we train are already pastors of churches.
Okay.
So our main audience, probably over 95% of our audience are pastors, and they're pastors of different denominations. And we're non-denominational, so we can go in and just present the word and study it. And then we go in, we tell them also, we're not here to change your theology. We don't want them to feel threatened. We want to just present them. We present them what the Lord has shown us, and we ask them to prayerfully study over it. And if they don't agree with our exact theology, they're going to learn a lot of information about how to accurately study the Word of God.
Okay.
And the Holy Spirit will take them and direct them in their studies.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me some stories. Tell me some areas of the world, and if you can name the country, that's fine. But if you can't, that's fine too. But let's get excited about what God's doing through this ministry.
The first thing that comes to mind is actually from on one of our Bible distributions. We do Bible distributions in persecuted and non-persecuted areas, and we'll be distributing. We received a grant this year to distribute 40,000 Bibles this year. And these Bibles go to these very rural village people that will never have the opportunity to have a Bible. And a lot of times we'll get testimonies back from our partners that are distributing the Bibles, and it'll be 80-year-old adults that have been Christians for 30, 40 years and never owned a Bible. One particular woman was not able to walk, and she crawled through her house to her front stoop and flagged down our team as they were walking through the village to look for believers that need Bibles. And she came to her stoop, and she wanted her name on the list. And when we returned months later with Bibles, she was on that stoop waiting for them because she had heard they were coming. And her hands were up in the air. She was so excited that she was going to get her first Bible.
That's wonderful. How many folks do you feel like you've trained already through the years? It's a relatively young ministry, but how do you keep track of that?
Well, we try to keep some track on the number of books that we print, because that pretty much relates to those that we have reached in training. And we're a little over 400,000 books that we printed, but we also have our material electronically used in very restricted countries in the Middle East, in China, and we don't have any clue how far they've gone. Mm-hmm. We've had people that take them in there electronically, and they spread it secretly. And one contact that we had that spread it throughout China. So we just don't know how far it's gone.
You mentioned some of the printed materials in 35 languages, I think you said?
Correct. Uh-huh.
When you do the instruction, how do you handle the language differences?
Well, we use an interpreter, a trusted interpreter, as we're teaching. In some of our areas, we'll have some of our staff that speak the language. We have a Eastern Africa representative that's been with us now for over 10 years. He's based out of Kenya, but he works in the surrounding countries where they speak Swahili. So he goes with us when we teach, and he's one of the teachers as well. And then he goes on his own. We also send him on scouting trips to other countries to look for new areas of ministry. He's the one that recently, a little over a year ago, went down to Malawi and Zambia and scouted out those areas and established contacts. And then we followed up with some teachers thereafter.
I would imagine that there may be someone listening who might fit the bill, maybe a retired pastor or someone who has the time that would like to investigate. Maybe they could be used in ministry like yours. What steps do they take?
Absolutely. They just contact us at our office. They can email us through our email, or they can give us a phone call at our office number, and they'll be connected to me, and I'll be happy to share with them what we do. Not our Americans that travel over, we do travel to safe areas. So we leave the heavily persecuted areas to our missionaries. But in some areas, we have been able to pull persecuted pastors out of heavy areas, bring them to a safe location, and then our American teachers are able to instruct them there.
Have you traveled recently yourself to any of these countries? And if so, where and what did you learn?
My last trip was just last year to Malawi and Zambia, and to follow up on those contacts we made. That was in last summer.
Not the first time you've been there?
No, I had been to Zambia actually the year before, but I went to the extreme northern area of Zambia. In Zambia, what's interesting about Zambia is it's had mission activity for decades. So I went there not expecting, a lot of opportunity for us, quite honestly. But I traveled north. It was about 17 hours by car to the very northern part of Zambia along the Congo border. And what I found there was pastors had not been reached. They have not had any training, and 40%, 50% of them didn't have Bibles. So we knew Zambia in the rural areas, extreme rural areas, needed attention. And so when we came back, we studied that. And then that's what led me to send our contact, Peter, from Kenya. I sent him down, and he met with some evangelistic leaders in Malawi, and he met with them to see what the need was in Malawi, which is the same. They are an excellent group of leaders that connect with other evangelical churches, but they're not able to, they don't have the resources or the method to be able to reach village pastors on a large scale. Mm-hmm. And that's what we'll be able to help them with. He also went into eastern Zambia, and that's when he found that eastern Zambia was just like northern Zambia.
So wherever you look, there's need, isn't there? There's
really,
spiritual need. Yeah.
Really is. You travel to the corners of the planet, and you're going to find lots of need everywhere you go.
Well, I'm going to assume that this is how you're spending the second half of your life, right? I mean, you started out in construction and business, and now you're doing this. What's that been like for you, Dan?
It's been a remarkable journey. It really has. My family and I have had experiences we will never be able to fully grasp until eternity, when we meet all those precious souls we've been able to serve. That's probably the biggest blessing, is being able to go and serve. And they're so grateful that you come to them, and when you present them with a Bible, or whether you're providing them a theological book that they can study, or you're teaching them, or you're just going and you're praying with them, that's really a blessing and a joy that is hard for others to understand. It really is.
Dan Hawkins' transition from running a construction company to leading a ministry is a great example of a person listening to the call of God and following that call in obedience. It's going to look different for others. It may be leaving your vocation. It may mean God using you where you are. But the key lesson for all of us is saying yes to God's call of service, whatever it is. We'll place a link online to Village Ministries at firstpersoninterview.com, where you can learn more about this organization. These interviews are made possible in part by the Far East Broadcasting Company, which celebrates anyone who chooses to support the message of Jesus Christ reaching out around the world. That's what FEBC has been doing for 80 years through radio and now new forms of online media. Check it out at febc.org. Now, with thanks to my friend and producer Joe Carlson, I'm Wayne Shepherd. Join us next time for First Person.